Catholic and then became Pentecostal. And then after that, I then became non-religious. But before becoming non-religious, a lot of reading and trying to make sure, because in Nigeria, you don't just wake up one morning and say, I'm not going to church or mosque anymore.
That's it.
You have to have a very good reason and explain to your family.
That's it.
So before doing that, I made sure I knew what I was talking about. And I'm at a place now where I feel like I am grounded in my truth. And I try to talk to people about religion to get them to see why I don't think it's a good idea, especially where I come from, Nigeria, where we're heavily religious and it intertwines with our day-to-day lives, and I see that causes issues. That's why So I follow a lot of his channels, like, SMILE2JANNAH and Sam Jawa and all that stuff. A lot of his YouTube recommendations. But I follow towards the apologetics. I see some of the opinions, some I agree with, some I don't. And I like to keep tabs and stuff.
Well, that's awesome, because we are all on a journey. We have different levels of understanding, and it's awesome how you're still keeping in touch with the arguments and discussions, and you're
it's
still
never ending. It's never ending.
That's amazing. I love it.
I'm always open to change my mind when I see something tangible that convinces me to change my mind.
So in terms of, you said some of the stuff that I was saying you found interesting. What in particular did you find interesting? And then maybe we could just go on from there.
So there was a video. This was after when the whole Ukraine thing kicked off. A lot of the points you raised there were just facts, and being a black man in the West, you connect these dots, but it's not in your face. Then to hear somebody else say these things, and it's like, yeah, this is exactly what I've been saying. It's part of the reason why I followed through. So I watched that. I watched some of the other videos. There was another one that was about, there was a fasting one I liked, because we talked about, how it helps health-wise and stuff like that. Although, partially disagreed with was the fact that there are studies that show that fasting also affects the negative because they overeat, and there's actually a concern out there in the Muslim world that people become overweight, in the process of Ramadan, because when they break their fast, they eat. So little things like that. Some I agree with, some I don't.
But just to put one point in there, just before you move on, is also when you see those studies that talk about overeating, also try to connect it to which countries it's referring to, because most of those statistics are to do with the Arab nations and their GDP and their...
reflect, that makes sense, because when you have a lot of money, you can break the fast with a lot of food.
Come on.
That makes sense. And then there are things that I don't necessarily agree with, religion in general. I think there are good ideas and stuff you can take from there, but by and large, I think, especially at a societal level, I don't think it's a good idea. I think, why? Because a lot of it is not grounded in what I understand to be true. And this is something I only realized after having done my whole 180 from being heavily religious and being very pro-God, to then being where I am now. What I used to do, apologetics, go to Dalston and preach and all that. When I would do that, people would ask me these questions, and I've always pushed for truth. My thing is, if I discover something as a fact and it goes against what I believe, I'm dropping that belief, because now there is truth that goes against what I thought to be true. If that makes sense.
I'm just trying to recall your name again.
Osas.
I know Osas.
Yeah.
Osas, yes. So it's like O and then SAS.
You're not sure, ask me again.
Yeah, no, great. Okay, so Osas, that is very interesting that you mentioned that. You know why? Because I would say there was more simplicity possibly about 20 plus years ago, but now because there's heavily kind of involvement in philosophy, that's why I would say probably that the argumentation and the questions have gone in it's gone in a different direction. And because of that,
I understand the Dawah space too. I feel like Dawah has evolved. People are pushing more for a sort of like an empirical angle. So when you hear when I talk to some of the other guys here, they argue from, they try to blend it into the Western empiricism, which is different from the Dawah you get in West Africa, which is very much a complete push against evolution, for instance. But they're like, no, of course not. It's just not true. When you come to the West, the ideas are different. They go, oh, no, we're not necessarily saying evolution isn't true, but things like natural selection and common descent from like lesser animals isn't true. In other words, it's a lot more fine-tuned idea that kind of works with our current understanding of how we came to be now.
I've actually had the good fortune of going to Gambia and even Switzerland. So I would say that they're two extremes in terms of what society would say in terms of facilities for education. And it's very interesting to see when you do speak to the people. I would also draw it back to Maslow's triangle. And it actually comes down to this point that, you know, somebody that's struggling to survive, somebody that's just living hand to mouth, they don't care about philosophy, they don't care about evolution, they care about the main principles and any other idea that comes, and it's cognitive dissonance. Like, it's difficult for them to, without understanding and education of certain imams, it's going to be very difficult for those ideas to penetrate the cerebrum, in other words. So that's literally what I've noticed. However, when you do get certain people that maybe are in the maybe higher levels of society in terms of income, they have more time because they're not living.
Reflect on these things.
And you can access, like, I'm doing this online course, and on this online course you got some people from America, you got some people from Egypt, some people. So even the way Zoom classes happen, and like there was this one course on philosophy that I saw, and there was somebody, I think it was either from Uganda or Nigeria or Kenya, one of the three, I forget, and somebody goes, "This is remarkable how me sitting in a village in Kenya, I'm able to access this university lecture on YouTube." But think about it, it's only because that person is, their stomach is filled.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think that's...
Smart way.
Yeah. I think they're going that way.
You make a good point in that the sort of explosion of access to information, even in rural areas, has improved, right? Because you have a smartphone, which is very big in Africa, because people don't really necessarily have access to steady power to have like a laptop or a desktop to sit down and Google stuff. With a smartphone, people are getting sharper. People are asking questions, right?
Yes.
It was one of the when I was reflecting, but it took a while to live religion, but thinking about it, one of the things I thought would be the biggest issue for religion would be this era we live in now, where people have access to information to fact check things that a lot of these scriptural writers didn't know we could fact check. Put it that way. And it's not just Islam, it spans across all religions, where you have claims that are made, and people can then go and look up empirical facts that can be fact checked, and then go, well, that doesn't play. Things like that. I was talking to some other guy over there. We're talking, he's a Christian, and we're talking about the predictions of the end of time. One of the predictions is that the stars in the night sky will drop to the ground like fireflies, things like that. And it was so obvious, the person that wrote that thought the stars are actually that small, and they would drop and maintain that size, not knowing that the stars are massive. The sun is a star, and it's actually a small star. Just to give you an idea of how the current era we're in now, it's partly why I actually became religious as well. It's the fact that there's limitless amounts of information out there that you can use to learn and fact check things and really start to ask questions. Because that was what happened. Because I would start to ask my religious preachers questions, and they were just clueless. Because I'd go preach, give out pamphlets, and you have your answers. You have your you have your answers that are prepped from the prepping training for evangelism. We call it evangelism. We call it dawah. And when you talk to a non-religious person or somebody that has done their homework, it doesn't take long to know that this person knows what they're talking about. And start asking questions, and you go, okay, I don't know the answer now, just leave that with me, and blah, blah, blah. So I go back and I ask questions, and the preachers don't know what they're talking about too. Or they point you to something that's demonstrably wrong and insist it's right, and I'm like, well, you don't know what you're saying, so... So it was that process that pushed me out of religion.
It's actually very interesting what you said, because, and I'm now going to take the discussion, and I'm going to prove everything that I say, obviously, that everything you mentioned, every single one of them, Islam doesn't fall in those traps. Absolutely and clearly not, and I'm going to back up. Everything is obviously all going to be recorded. You can fact check it at home as well. And I'm going to try and give you every evidence that comes into my mind that I've memorized, that you can at this moment be like, okay, it's here, and he's not just speaking off the top of his, just from his whims and desires. And you'll also be, Sam Dawa, you can check it afterwards as well. All right, so Osas, let's go back to the basics. As you know, the DJs used to say back in the days, let's go back to basics. So, let's go back to basics. And because you've left the religion, I'm sure you're familiar with certain philosophers that even liberal and theology-based people use, and that's the likes of Descartes. Yeah. So Descartes came up and he said, "I think, therefore I exist." Yeah. So he was talking about existence. Now, no matter how skeptical Osas you become, is it Osas or Osas?
Both work.
Excellent. So Osas, no matter how skeptical you are, you're standing there and you're like, "No, Zishan, nothing. I don't want to accept anything, nothing. Anything you say, no." All right, okay, Osas, no problem. Do you accept, Osas, that there is existence?
There is existence. I can't prove it, but I do accept it. Yeah.
You can't prove it, but you accept that there is existence, yeah?
Yeah.
Otherwise, this discussion would be futile.
Yeah, it's an axiom. Like they are
Very good.
you know, what's the name?
Self-evident proof. Yeah.
Self-evident truths that we just have to accept. You're here, I'm here, type of thing.
Excellent.
The only way we can operate, in other words, objective truth, where we can say, we look at things and go, this is demonstrably true.
Yeah, excellent. So now that there's existence, we accept that there's existence. Would you say that there is, and I'm going to elaborate on this, that there is uniformity, regularity, and stability in nature? And what I mean by this is, if I was to ask you, and feel free to jump in, if I was to ask you why this watch is not randomly combusting, it's not randomly floating away, it's not randomly disappearing, or you have enough trust that when you're crossing the road, you're not just going to end up in Egypt, cars aren't just going to come in and out of existence. For us to even do science, we have to accept that there is a degree or level of uniformity, regularity, and stability, as the philosophers say. Do you accept that as a reasonable premise?
In some areas of our reality, there is stability and a sense of balance and all that.
Yeah, because if there's none, you just can't do science. It's absolutely impossible for you to do science without there being a degree of uniformity, regularity,
There's definitely a degree of uniformity that is observable, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, you think about it. You know, we've got like the news, breaking news after every hour. If there was no uniformity, regularity, stability, there will be breaking news every minute. Oh, Big Ben has disappeared. It's now on top of the Statue of Liberty.
There's definitely some order to our existence.
Yeah, exactly.
In that sense. But that is, I feel like that is perceived in that, take our Earth, for instance, right? We have water cycle, sun rising up, going down, the moon, all that sense of balance. But at the grand scheme of things, it's not necessarily balanced. We have asteroids flying into Earth, we have heat death incoming, we have the sun that will expand and consume the Earth one day. In other words, whilst there is a perception of order and regularity, in the grand scheme of things, it's chaos.
Okay, so with regards to the asteroids, when they come in, there's so many layers of the Earth's atmosphere that most, I would say most, if not all, get broken up, come in. And I think it was about 10 odd years ago that there was an asteroid in Russia, and by the time it came down to our atmosphere, it came as pebbles and it just caused minor discomfort. The sun
Still comes in.
Yeah, it still comes in, but
asteroids that wiped out the dinosaurs.
Yeah, they wiped out the dinosaurs, but not humanity. And that's what, as humans, we say that's the distinguishing feature between us and dinosaurs.
We've had asteroids that have actually come in, parts of it broke away, but not all of it, big enough, and it crashed and killed people.
Yeah, killed people, but not humanity as a whole.
Not humanity as a whole.
Exactly, and that's where we then bring in certain prophecies of the Day of Judgment, and we say, look, here are the prophecies, and the two don't contradict. Yeah? For example, for us to say that, oh, this is a prophecy of the Day of Judgment, yeah, Jesus will return, the Mahdi will come, and so on and so forth, and an asteroid comes and wipes everyone out, that's automatically proven our beliefs to be false, isn't it? Because those things haven't come to pass. But as long as society is continuously living and those prophecies are coming true one by one, this is in favor of Islam and in favor of the prophecies that the Prophet said. Second thing, even with regards to the sun eventually exploding, or the grand crunch, as they say, that again is not contradicting Islam. It's actually in favor of Islam, because if we're saying that there will be a day of judgment where everything will be destroyed, that's in line with that. Yeah, we're saying that prophecies will take place, then destruction will happen. If destruction happens before, then you can raise the finger and say this is incorrect. However, if the order is in the timeline of the prophecies coming first and then that, we've got absolutely no issue with that. But we're going on a tangent. Remember this point, Osas, yeah? So what I said was, we've got existence, we've got uniformity, regularity and stability.
Not in all areas. That's the part I disagree with.
Okay, but when you say not in all areas, I'm talking in areas for us to be able to do science.
In areas for us to be able to do science. I would say even that's limited, because the point you made earlier about the fact that we haven't been wiped out justifies that these things are true. But if we get wiped out, there'll be nobody to question that these things are not true. In other words, we can see that stars, for instance, would expand and consume the planets around them. We know that this is the life cycle of stars. We know that Earth falls within the line, the shooting range of the sun when it tries to die, right? So are we then saying that that is the end of the, because science can see that that is coming at some point in the future? Or are we then saying, because we see the randomness of the fact that things can happen, look at a black hole, for instance, sucking things in, or you look at the fact that stars will expand and consume planets, doesn't that suggest a sense of chaos?
Would you?
He does not get it.
It's like, you know, when a vehicle's reversing. And this says vehicle is reversing. That's what it sounds like. All right, so with regards to the sun, Walaikum salam. With regards to the sun, would you accept that before it explodes or whatever happens, would you say that we at least have, give and take, about 1 million years? Yeah? About 1 million. And would you say that's enough time for human beings, because the timeline that we have is approximately 100 years for us to colonize, say, Mars? Yeah, or even possibly travel faster than light, travel other places. So the timeline that we're dealing with, the sun exploding and all of that, again, still falls within the line that, let's just say Earth is destroyed, who's to guarantee that we're even going to be on Earth? Who's to guarantee that we're even going to be in the solar system? So again, the timelines still form and still fall in line with theology and with religion. Whether it's the star, whether it's the sun, whether it's the sun, the star, whether it's Earth, whatever it may be. But coming back to this point, with regards to us not acknowledging science to be uniform, regular and stable, what you're doing...
That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, but let's just say, you did say that there's certain aspects of that you don't accept.
Yeah, I'm saying, because what you said was...
Which other aspect?
It's the chaos of our existence. Really.
Like what?
The fact that there's nothing stopping an asteroid from coming in tomorrow.
Yeah, there is. There's many layers in our atmosphere. There's at least 5 layers in our atmosphere that actually break apart the asteroid before it comes.
But that's not guaranteed.
Don't you think that's amazing?
I think it's cool, yeah.
5 layers that stop an asteroid.
I mean, we even have...
Mars only has barely one.
Don't we even have like there's an asteroid belt around Saturn that pulls a lot of the asteroids that shoot in towards Earth into Saturn's orbit, so it doesn't impact Earth. So you could even argue that, oh, that's something miraculous about that.
No, you don't have to say miraculous. You could just say, that's cool, isn't it? That's cool, isn't it?
The point being, we might see things that we perceive to work in our favor, but I would argue that that is from, guys, we only see that because it's from our perspective. In the grand scheme of things, the universe as we know it, given what we know about the way the world works today, the way the life in general, the cosmos, everything works today, we are insignificant, and then it goes against claims that are made in...
Why would you say that, and what's your basis?
What's my basis of what's insignificant? The grand scale. The fact that we are a tiny speck of dust in an insignificant part of the cosmos, right? Considering when a lot of these scriptures were written, they were written from the perspective of man, where we were in the center of the universe. That's why you look at old Earth models, where we're at the center of the universe, you have the sun rising around, you had the dome and all that stuff. These were real beliefs that people had. and then they fed into our scripture.
Quran doesn't say that, by the way, yeah? Quran didn't accept that.
Well, from what I know about the Quran, it does say that it spread the earth. The interpretation is, it's not up for interpretation, right?
No, no. We're not going to take the Christian way out.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's up for interpretation. I'm just saying it's based off the reading. No, I'm not giving any opinion on it. Based off the reading, saying the earth was spread.
Sorry to keep interrupting. I hope you don't mind.
No, of course not.
Okay, excellent. So you said based, because sometimes I forget. So you said based upon the reading. Arabic reading or English reading?
A literal reading, Arabic or English.
No, because if you're looking at the Arabic reading of the carpet, which you're saying is spread out, the actual word that's used is a spiral and a spring, like wrapping around, like you wrap a turban around, and the way you wrap a turban around a spherical object. Yeah, you can't. But in English, the translation is different. In fact, there's many things that in English, that's the mistake that a lot of people make. They take the English reading, and then they think that that's the default position. However, the English reading it's a very loose.
Yeah, because the way the language is written is not what it was translated to. I get that completely.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, even if you take the Quranic reading, there are things that you would read in the Quran and go, knowing what we know now, so that's not true. I mean, look at the origin, for instance. Even in Arabic, I could argue, without reading the Arabic text, that the Quran suggests that we came from Adam and Eve, right?
Yeah.
What we know now goes against that. That's a good example. And my point is,
what we know at the moment, not
at the
what
moment,
we know now.
What we know now, yeah. It can change in the future.
Yeah, induction. You know the problem of induction of science. That's something scientists put to the side.
Yeah.
So, whenever you talk about science, which you have done, first, for us to even move forward, you have to prove to me that induction, because over, I would say, 80% of science uses induction. Yeah, that's a conservative number. Induction is this. So today, the sun is rising. Prove using science that the sun will rise again tomorrow. The only way...
It doesn't only operate on induction, though.
I didn't say that. I said 80% of science relies on induction. So let's just say copper wire conducts electricity. What's to say that it will conduct electricity tomorrow? Water is making the seed grow. What's to say it's going to work tomorrow without falling in circular reasoning? You can't. Yeah, David Hume brought up this. Well, some say he came up with the problem of induction. Some say that it was come up before. But again, science has to tolerate induction. It says it's the inference to the best explanation. Yeah? It cannot prove induction. Yeah? So whatever we're doing today, according to science, number one, it can't deal with induction. And the other thing that you were saying, oh, our understanding shows that this is false. No, because number one, you have to deal with four things. One is the replication crisis. Yeah, and the replication crisis is when you look at, and I think it was Amgen replicated certain scientific studies, and they noticed that only 11% gave the same results. And a psychological, there was one which wasn't scientific based, but it was psychology based. They said less than 50% gave us the same.
Are you saying in the hard sciences, majority of the tests that were tried to be replicated failed? In the hard sciences? I'm not talking psychology, I'm talking physics.
Yeah, that's why I gave you two. I gave so the first one, Amgen, was biotech firm, and the other one was a psychology firm. Whichever a person wants to take, I'm covered from both sides. So you can check this afterwards. So this
I've read up on the product. So from my understanding of it,
the replication crisis.
The replication crisis, yes. The problem of reproduction. Basically reproducing tests that have been verified to be true. Right? Things have been said, okay, this is the case, the phenomenon. You do this test to get this answer.
Yes.
Now, the thing with the scientific processes is that is baked into the scientific process, to my understanding anyway.
Say that again?
The thing with the scientific process is that replication is baked into it for it to be verified as true. In other words, for me to take what you said as true, I should be able to replicate the test you've done and arrive at the same answer.
Yes.
Yeah? Design my own test model, do my calculations, do whatever.
That's my point.
And then arrive at the same answer. But my point is that replication there is what grounds science. So when you say things like, oh, there's a replication problem, that tells me that those guys haven't done science properly. Because if you do it properly, you get your hypothesis, Yeah, you test your hypothesis.
How would you do science properly? What's your criteria for doing science properly?
You have a hypothesis, right? You observe a phenomenon. Yeah? Observe a phenomenon, then that induction comes into play. And you go, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's this. Note all your thoughts down, and then you test to fail.
Yeah. Look, what you're saying...
You asked me a question, I'm explaining.
Yeah, sorry, my mistake.
So you test to fail. By testing to fail is you test all your ideas to see the one that breaks. The ones that break, you push to the side. Until you get the one that all the ways you try to break it, don't break it. Then you take it, another person takes that same thing that you've explained, they come up with their own model, try to break it, don't break it. That's the peer review process what I'm trying to explain. So when it's been peer reviewed, and then those guys go, you know what, I did mine, 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 plus 2 is 4, and we have a general understanding that 2 plus 2 is 4. When it's done at that level, you will not find me one scientific study. Tell me if there is. In the STEM fields, that goes against that.
Right.
You will not find it.
Right. There was a reason why I interrupted, because I knew exactly where you were going, and I just wanted to save us time, but out of respect, I didn't. Yeah, go for it. There's a reason I circumvented that. Because what you were doing, you were just telling me the scientific method, which I don't have an issue with.
Yeah, because you asked me how.
Yeah. But what I was saying was a biotech firm called Amgen, me mentioning these two presupposed that they're using the scientific process. Reason why I say that is because number one, they have scientists. Number two, they're following the scientific method. Number three, they have funding. Number four, they have backing. So they have all of these things. Scientific process it's a given. You can't do science without following the scientific method on a kind of industrial level. That's why I just wanted to circumvent that.
I don't know about that though. I disagree with that because there are studies that
you can't be peer reviewed until you follow the scientific method when it comes to the STEM. Yeah, which you were saying.
Yeah.
But that's why I gave you. So this is something which is accepted. You can check this Amgen. It's a biotech firm, and it's 11%. It's on there. You can verify it afterwards. You said even if there's one, I've given you one. In fact, I gave you a psychology one as well. But so number one is the replication crisis. Number two was induction. So we've covered two. The third, this is what I wanted to get to, but in order for me to get to this, I had to cover the first two, which is interpretation of data. Yeah, you got linear curves that you're checking. You got
Byzantine.
Not Byzantine, but Bayesian, yeah.
Bayesian.
Yeah, Bayesian probability, you've got linear projections, you've got different ways. And again, there was a study done that you had something to do with footballers and red cards. And they were given the data and they were asked to interpret the data. And again, there was disparity on interpretation of data based upon the models that you're following. And of course, finally, we're dealing with P, which is paradigm shifts, which I'm sure you're familiar with, which is initially we had Newton, then there was a complete paradigm shift when we went to Einsteinian physics, and then again there's predicted to be another paradigm shift when it comes to quantum mechanics and quantum physics. So whenever somebody comes along and somebody says, this is what we know now, that's not understanding the philosophy of science, because science, by definition, is something which acknowledges that it's going to change, and that's one of the things that the propagators of science feel very passionate about, that we don't know. And that's something that they will come and they will say, I don't know. Is this something that, can we accept evolution? No. In fact, evolution, when it comes to the current evidence that we have now, it can change tomorrow. Dawkins has admitted this himself. It can change tomorrow. So when it comes to science and using science as a yardstick, that's one thing. Yeah, where you said, okay, empirical. But I'm going to take this one step forward. You would say, okay, we take things and we have more knowledge about empirical evidence. I will argue and take it one step forward. When it comes to theology and Islam, we look at empirical, we will look at philosophical, we will look at ontological, and we will look at rational. So we will take all of these things, and our thing will be more general. Like science, it won't be able to explain why. It won't be able to explain moral questions. It can't decipher and answer the hard problem of consciousness. It can't answer free will. It can't even give us and solve the problem of the brain and the mind problem, the mind-brain problem. Yeah?
I was going to say, the criticisms I heard regarding science, the paradigm shift, for instance, back to the problem of replicating the findings.
They're not criticisms, by the way. These are weaknesses of science, I would say, or shortcomings.
I would say the paradigm shift is baked into the philosophy of science. Because the idea behind it is, if we observe a phenomenon, and we have a scientific theory that explains it, the belief is that if you're doing, that guy's so distracting.
I'm used to him. To the Christian.
The belief is that, based on what we know, any finding supersedes that. You would never find a scientific theory, that is grounded. You wouldn't have a timeline for that. From the time of Galileo, I believe, you won't find a scientific theory that has been said to be a scientific theory, as you know, I'm sure you know, that they've gone back on. What you only find is a superseding of the idea. Take Newtonian physics and was it Einstein?
Yeah.
So Newtonian physics, classical, you push something, it moves and all that stuff. Push something, action, reaction, type of thing. And when you break it down into the Einstein physics, oh man, that guy is... Sorry, let me come this way. When you break it down to Einstein physics, the things that have been discovered in Newtonian physics, they don't get cancelled. What has happened is the bounds of knowledge has increased. In other words, the things that we get to interact with, at a molecular level, when people go and play around with atoms, the physical laws there don't work with Newtonian physics. Does that mean Newtonian physics has stopped working? No, it hasn't. It just means there's a better understanding of it. So I like to think of it as a sentence. Someone writes a sentence, this book is yellow. This book is yellow, and then somebody comes, this book is yellow and it has 100 pages. You would never find somebody that goes, oh, this book is yellow, now it's red. You won't find that. So that is the idea behind the paradigm shift. It's not necessarily a paradigm shift, it's an improvement of our understanding. Right?
Okay, so
the formula, for instance, Newtonian physics, all the calculations based on that, nothing has changed. Right? What they're saying is there's a limit to that, and when you get there, you have to apply another understanding of physics.
Okay, that's actually incorrect, because anytime a theory comes, unless the theory itself, they say, okay, force equals ma, or Newtonian physics, that only works in space, or that only works at an atomic level. That's not what the theory claims at all. Newtonian physics was talking about motion. Whether it's motion on this planet, whether it's motion at atomic level, subatomic level, whether it's motion in space. Now, when it comes to Newtonian physics, it was not proven to be wrong. However, when it comes to quantum mechanics, it is absolutely categorically false. When it comes to subatomic level, Newtonian physics doesn't work.
Because it doesn't work at that level. That's my point.
But when it came, it wasn't said that it's only going to work at the macro level. They said Newtonian mechanics to such a degree. I'll give you a philosopher or a scientist at the time, Bernard. He's the one that Richard Dawkins always quotes. Bernard something. He's a philosopher. Bernard. Let's just go with Bernard for now. So Bernard said, look, we've solved physics. We're done with it. Now we can move on to something else. To such a degree, that people said, okay, that's fine, like we found everything out. Einstein came and then changed everything on its head. E equals mc squared is something that it is somewhat of a paradigm, because you are not allowed to question the theory of relativity. You just can't. Just like you can't question the theory of evolution at a high peer-reviewed level without being discredited or without being labeled as a theologian or like a religious fanatic or something like that.
Question every time. Question.
I'm not saying you can't question. I'm saying yes, you will question, but not if you want to go far in your career. There is a documentary called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed, by Ben Stein. So he goes, you can watch that, and then he goes through all the case studies. It's all there. I'm pretty sure it's free on YouTube. So it is going to be a risk for your career. Same with Einstein. The only reason people are now feeling confident to challenge the theory of relativity, it's because of the advances that we have in quantum mechanics. Yeah. However, when something comes, and this is something, paradigm shift is something that's accepted by philosophers like Thomas Kuhn. Yeah, it's not something that they say, oh, it's science building on. Yeah, if I come and say this rule applies, that is a categorical statement. If I say this,
you can demonstrate it.
Regardless. The point that I'm saying is, if I come and I say this applies to the park, then somebody can say, okay, Zishan said this applies to the park. Newton,